Today we are at Ramchandar Sons at Connaught Place, Delhi. This is the oldest toy store in India. Since 1890, this toy store is delivering to Indians, and since 1935, since the inception of this particular place called Connaught Place, this toy store is here. So we are going to talk to the owner, who is 85 years old and controlling this shop for last 70 or 80 years. So let us go and talk to him.
To start off with, this Ramchandar Restaurant was started in 1890 by my great-grandfather by the name of Seth Chunilal, a Marwari from Rajasthan. At that point of time, a lot of Marwaris were shifting out to northeast, that is Calcutta, because Calcutta was the capital of India at that time. For some unknown reason, my great-grandfather Seth Chunilal chose Ambala cantonment. Later on, it dawned on me that Ambala cantonment was the biggest cantonment at that time, and in his wisdom, he thought that I must open in a place where there are very few Marwaris, and I presume and assume typical Marwari, he must have thought less competition. So in 1890, he opened his first store in Ambala cantonment, and I repeat, the cantonment, not the Ambala city, which was the biggest cantonment at that time. Along with him came there later on my grandfather, by whose name this company started, Ramchandar. There were three brothers in fact. One had gone out, Seth Shamsundara, but my grandfather and his brother were running the show on till my father was old enough to run this, and he has younger brother. They continued with Ramchandar and Sons till 1930-35. The exact date cannot be given because this particular shop was started in 1935, when Connaught Place was more or less a deserted, barren area, and people were scared to come here, and it was also marked as the most elite toy trading business center, created by the British, who were ruling the country at that time for their own pleasures. At that point of time, we had two trading centers. One was Connaught Place, and then the other was Chandni Chowk. So at that point of time, we had the old Delhi market, which is Chandni Chowk, which catered to the elite of Delhi, including the Rai Bahadur, Rai Sahibs, etc., etc., and even certain knights who were made knights. And this was created by the British for their own pleasure. Lieutenant Baker designed and created it with. Why it was called Connaught Place, I do not know, because the Duke of Connaught never ruled India. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I do make a mistake sometimes, I think he was the second son of Her Majesty the Queen Victoria. So from 1935 onwards till the Second War, 1945 ended, Connaught Place picked up the cream of Indian society, including all the Rajas, Maharajas, Nawabs, Seths, Rai Bahadurs, Rai Sahibs, knights of the British Empire, including the British community. A certain example was set here that no bargaining, price is fixed, and a fair price center became. Connaught Place, as you see today, has changed vastly, because at that time the piazzas were hardly there, and you could park a shop right in front of my shop. I've seen, let's say, Maharaj Jaipur coming around the corner, opening the door for Her Highness Gayatri Devi, or things like that. All the Rajas, Maharajas would come here, Nawabs would come here, and all the ICS officers, including British and Indian, and certain letters of appointment were issued, like my appointment to the Governor General of India, my appointment to the Viceroy of India. We also received a lot of those bouquets, but somehow, with the passage of time, those bouquets were removed from the forefront of the trading establishments. It was a limited market. It has got about 1900 pillars. It's the shape of a horseshoe. It's got 12 blocks, one major block, this P block. Then Sir Sobha Singh, who was the main construction man of this area, also built up Regal building as a block, and he owned quite a bit of that property. Sir Sobha Singh also built up Sujan Singh Park and the A block, which is known as Sujan Singh block, and of course the Ambassador Hotel and all what you see here are all created by him. Connaught Place was constructed, the people who were behind there, the engineers, were all mostly Sardars, and they all also happened to own a shop or two in each block, and they were running the stores. As far as this shop is concerned, my great-grandfather, Sir Chunilal, why he chose toys, I do not know. Maybe it was some thought inherited from his village up in Chunjuru in Rajasthan, or he saw children playing, he liked it. Maybe there were not enough toy shops here, dedicated toy shops. What you had are small shops which were selling miscellaneous stuff, including tops and skipping ropes, which were mostly made in Amroha, Varanasi, which is Banaras at that time, and places in South India near Mysore called Channapatna, etc., etc. All these centers, unfortunately, they were made of wood, lacquered with paint, but unfortunately most of these units are now closed. And so we come down to what existed before 1935, I have no idea, because most of the toys were imported from England, mostly Europe and America. But since England was ruling this country, most of the toys that came in was to help develop the toy industry in UK, which was actually called England at that time, became later UK, which means three kingdoms joined together like Wales, Scotland and England. And fabulous toys were made by these people, expensive toys which could last for generations. I've had the good fortune of working in a couple of factories in England as well as in Germany, and the real classic toys means toys would last, would interpret the need of a child were there. And this continued till 1969, when Government of India placed a total ban on the import of toys. Now starts the agony of the Indian toy manufacturer. He had started making toys in the late 50s and early 60s. But he never progressed further like the Chinese did. We had no infrastructure available to us, as far as I remember, from the government side or from any other side, where facilities are available, technical knowledge, etc., etc. I may be wrong, but I feel that the government had a very lukewarm attitude towards the toy industry. What the most unfortunate part was that most of the manufacturers who were having teething troubles or grew up, they never looked beyond, I feel so, maybe I'm wrong, beyond their nose. They would bring designs from, and I was one of the persons, we would bring copies, or we would bring toys or samples from abroad, and they would copy them. But no real toy was produced per se as something original. No technical knowledge was put into the factories. Since I started 3 times to put up an industry in India. I failed. We do not have the facility like now that I've seen in China, in Europe, America, that there are certain governmental facilities available to a person or to an entrepreneur who wants to start a toy factory or a production unit, but he had nowhere to go. There was a small service institute in Okhla that I had the occasion to study there, and I all got those certificates of what all I've done academically. But overall, I could not get whatever I wanted. Total information on the industry was never available or up to date. It was always antiquated and antique or vintage type. And this continued on and on till 1992, 93. Since development facilities were not available to us, we had to use the trial and error method. And whatever we produced, we never designed fresh items. And each item that was produced there for 10 years, 15 years. Unlike when Mr. Narasimha Rao, the former Prime Minister of India, opened India to the world. That was a little late. I feel that he should have opened up 20 years early. And so in 1993, Japan, China studied the toy market in the early 90s. Let's go back to the toy industry. The toy industry was basically concentrated in Europe and America. With China coming up with cheap imitations, the Western countries' toy industry started feeling the pinch. And the Chinese government realized in 1991, 92 that they must create an infrastructure for the production of toys. Now, why toys? Because if you look at it relatively, After the Second War, Japan started producing toys from scraps, tin, steel, everything. And the next course of 7-8 years, the economy of Japan changed from a war-torn economy to an economy that could dictate terms. And this went on till I think 1965. Then Taiwan, if you look at it, the toy industry was moving south and west, came into Taiwan. Taiwan, and why did it come from Japan? Because Japan realized that they had small areas and they could use them more profitably for high-tech material, high-cost material, low area. And having come to Taiwan, Taiwan also used the same facility, having taken out a country away from China, and they put up a toy industry. Till the 1990s, I should say late 1980s, 1990, so Taiwan was producing toys, beautiful toys. We were also part of that import setup. Then in 1984, a delegation came from New York, from World Trade Center, led by Mr. Martin. They were looking new areas where they could put up toy industry. So this gentleman, who was with me for 4 or 5 days, he went up to Indonesia, he went up to Philippines, he looked up other countries, small countries, but somehow he came to India. He thought India was a vast country, because at that time there was political upheaval in Sri Lanka and these smaller countries. Politically we were very stable. But he could not find a way of setting up industries here because we had no information available for them to. The American or the European, when he wants to put up an industry in any country, he wants total information which we could not provide. We are the people who are the manufacturers of toys in India, because we never had the inclination to learn what is available in India. When they went out, when they approached the government, or the government approached us, so we were doing everything on our own steam, on our own strength, and we. After having done that, this 1984, Martin went back to US. What he said, I don't know. I've never seen his face thereafter. But the China realized, which was just suffering a lot. The GDP of India was higher in the mid-70s compared to China. C'est la vie. And the Chinese government started helping the local manufacturers to copy and export. Money, and dollars was the main theme. So that's what the Chinese people do. But China also started creating an infrastructure. I've been going to China for about 20 years now, and I find that every time I go there, I find a great improvement on the infra, which is not so here. And they put up industries, and they give all backup is there. There's no red tapeism, but it doesn't mean that they're not cruel or they're not this thing. They will come and check your factory after having given you a certain amount of time, gestation time, which is sometimes like 3 years. And if your production is very good, or your production is going on, the factory is going on, then they just walk in from the broad door and get out of a narrow door. But if you have not done what they expect you to do in a period of 3 years, then God help you. And this is because I have associate unit in China where we produce certain toys under our brand name. That's how I've learned that there is a great freedom to produce, but you have to stay within the framework of legality or laws, whatever. Coming up to that, the next 7-8 years, China started expanding their toy field, toy trade, and other areas also. But since I'm only concerned with toys, I can only say that they did. In 2000, 2001, 2002, China realized that they must have foreign toy manufacturers from America, from Europe, and so Mattel, US is there, Lego, Denmark is there. Just hypothetical example is being given to you. They all put up their manufacturing units there, producing toys at half the price, the quarter price what they're producing, because cost of living was going up, and cost of production is going up, labor is going up. China used that lever to make sure that products were as good as what was being manufactured by the parent company, but at 1/4 the price. And so they spread their wings. And they had a very good network intelligence, intelligentsia, as far as my industry is concerned. They feel that I needed a toy which was matched with the Indian theme or Indian song, so they produced that. They copied everything, and with the passage of time, they copied a toy as good as anywhere in the world. Now, as far as I know, in China, you have three qualities of product. One is for the Anglo-American, that's European and American markets, very high class, very good quality, and expensive. The second quality is for the emerging markets like India, etc., 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 and that's a little cheaper. Third is for countries like Africa, which are poor quality. But all the three toys will look exactly like, except the quality will not be so good. So this is it. This is how toys were. And with this, the Chinese economy went skyrocketing. Boom, boom. It's just burst like a volcano. That's all that I can at the moment give you. What is the next question?
There is another one thing which I want to know, or we want to know, that how do you think, since you have your whole life in the toy business in India, sitting in Delhi, so how do you think that the perception of people, the consumers' perception towards toys has changed?
Yeah, now
or how the people who used to buy India?
Now coming back to the mid-30s, I should say mid-40s, since the purchasing population was very low vis-a-vis Connaught Place, because I can really talk about Connaught Place, but they were all the rich and well-to-do gentry, class 1 or upper class. They bought toys irrespective of the price, and they bought quality toys. This went on till I think the mid-70s, when we ran out of English and American toys. Profits were high, quality was very good, but with the economy of my country changing, now the toy industry was also reaching into the middle class, lower middle class, upper lower class, middle lower class, all class. China hit on that idea that I must feed all classes, whether it's a multi-billionaire coming in from Mumbai or a beggar coming in from wherever they are outside the temples. The fact of the matter is that the beggar's child, or the beggar's child I should say, and the multi-millionaire's child, they all familiar with what they wanted. The multi-millionaire's child wanted a Lego doll, and so did the beggar's child. So China gave you a doll that looked like a Barbie or whatever, exactly what the rich were. So those toys were available, and I can only say that I'm very happy that even my chaprasi could afford to buy a toy for his child, which was not possible before 93, 92. Even the Indian toys were reasonably expensive, and anybody who wanted, let's say a class 4 employee wanted to buy a toy, it was very difficult for him. His income was low, and awareness of toys was not so high with the oil viewers. But along came what is known as television. A television which was a community television. If you went to a village, you'll find that in the village hall, everybody sitting on one television. Slowly but steadily. So now you found that you could have even the class 4 employee, or a person who can barely make his ends meet. After all, a child is a child, and a child is very important to anybody, whether it's me who's well to do or a beggar. A child occupies obviously. So now he could afford to buy a toy. It was within the reach. Chinese had given you toys within the reach of all starters of society.
How you came into this business?
No, I'll do. Okay. Born in 1937, at the time at 7:30 in the morning, in a place called Kasauli, which is in Himachal Pradesh. I'm a Marwari by religion, by ethos, but I'm a Himachali by birth. And I stayed there. It was a small little hovel where I was born. My father did not have any money, but as I grew up, I used to study in St. Columbus, where I was the last of the senior Cambridge educated boys, last batch. After that, there was no Cambridge University to us. It was to me it was available, and I did it from Cambridge University. But I used to spend most of my time in Kasauli, where we had a shop also. But shop was a name only because I never bothered very much. I used to live like a lord because I had a very big house, 2 horses, 12 servants to look after me, and I used to lord over Kasauli as a lord and master. But the small town, there were a lot of restrictions. There was no freedom. You could not step out of decency or cross the Lakshman Rekha because we lived as a family, all the people there knew my father. I knew all of them. I could not step out and bifurcate the laws of decency. From school, I joined St. Stephen's College, where I did my honours in history, because they were very clear that I'm going to join the foreign service. There were 13 boys in my class, 11 of them are in the IAS and IFS. And St. Stephen's College, for the particular course that I had taken, which is history honours, they trained you for the civil service. So it was not graduating from St. Stephen's College that was important, it is getting into the civil service. So 3 years, like you have most of the schools today teaching you how to get into IAS, college started from day one. Then, unfortunately, I lost my father at a very young age, and by virtue of being born as his son, I had to come to this chair. And quite frankly, I was not very happy. I was very arrogant, extremely snobbish. That's the basic law of my college. And I thought that there was nobody was superior than me. So this is 59. Fortunately, my weakness was always my gods. I never asked my mother or the widowed mother or my brother anything. If I needed anything, I would just go and sit in my temple and look at God, but without asking him for things. I don't know. It's not a hallucination, but it's a personal experience that I've always got what I wanted when I speak to him. Secondly, I used him as my psychoanalyst. Anytime I had a problem, I would go and cry it out, literally cry it. Even now, I have no hesitation in admitting something I learnt in Paris, that you got to have somebody who's your psychoanalyst. And I found that I had my little prayer room where I had my psychoanalyst right in front of me. What does the psychoanalyst do? Nothing. He listens to everything that you have to say. Your patient cries like hell, because some of my colleagues did that. And then he would charge the 600 francs, 500, 800 francs. So I used to fight with them. I say, what are you doing? Why don't you put up your Jesus Christ? But then religion is not a main factor there. So I came here. Then ultimately in the 1961-62, 3 ladies, Dr. Ratna Deshpande, Dr. Frize and Ms. Bakshi from the Palbharti Air Force School, they took me up under their wing to teach you what child education was, and child education and child development. I studied Maria Montessori's system of child education, and I started going to schools to sell them. From selling to schools, I also became a teacher, where I used to teach teachers on the development of child, how to use the toys. And so the name and fame went. From there, I diversified into special children, handicapped children needed special attention. There was also a very educative period, because it was very difficult to communicate with the Indian parents, most of them. Especially the richer they are, they think that they can buy my services or the services. And the low-income people who would come with a sick child or handicapped child or special child, I use the word special child, they would listen, they would take effort to rehabilitate a child. So this is it. Now at this stage, I am happy that I've achieved a lot of success, both in my job as well as name and fame and respect and honor. I have no regrets. I'm married to a very beautiful woman whose father used to be barrister at law at Allahabad. I've got a son who's an authority on music. I've got a daughter who's a winner of beauty contest. I'm the only idiot in the family who's achieved nothing.